And we are back, and it's time for the ElseWords. This is the main discussion, big discussion, well, one discussion topic that we've had for this show.
Just phrase it in the form of a yes or no question. The movie box office is on track for the lowest in 25 years as Spielberg and Lucas blockbuster Implosion, Omen Prevails. So two of the motherfuckers who kind of made the explosion of blockbusters and then kind of fucked it up themselves are now saying, hey, look, we were right. Look at everything going to shit because everybody just wants blockbusters now. I don't know exactly what the thought process is of, do they get the blame? Do they get the recollection of like, no, we told you? It's similar to me in what was done and said in comics over the years, which was Grant Morrison and Mark Miller, when they were friends, used to talk about the fact that the comics industry goes through cycles. It goes through a big boom, and then it goes through a lull, and then it breaks down and almost falls apart and goes into the crapper for a few years, and then it starts to turn around and come back again, and it's like this continuing thing. So they got in at a point where they knew the cycle was going to start to hit again, and they jumped on, and they rode it up. And then as it hit their lulls, they kind of both backed away and started doing stuff in other things. That's true to a certain degree. I mean, you can kind of watch it and see the measurements, but that's like anything. Anything goes through the highs and lows until all of a sudden it either doesn't exist anymore or it becomes the biggest thing in the world, and then it can't not exist because nature abhors a vacuum. As far as movies, we're talking about, a couple weeks ago, we talked about the Movie Pass with Nate Namey. And this Movie Pass is supposed to be $10 a month, and you can watch the pitch is all the movies that you want, but that's not really true because you can only watch a movie one time and you can only watch one a day. So it's already kind of cutting into itself. It's like fucking Hulu saying, we don't play ads except for when we play ads. But it still was like people were against it. Like AMC were saying, well, no, we think that that's too low. Maybe if you didn't have such shit films going on, it would be too low. But the fact is that more often than not, and I think I even said this at the time, there's not enough stuff out there that people really genuinely want to see. Now, I might be more inclined to go see it if I have a $10 a month Movie Pass that I'm already subscribed to in my pocket. It's like, okay, this month there's really dick all out there that I want to see. But fuck it, I'll go give it a try for this little independent film somewhere because otherwise I'm just wasting my money. It's like a Netflix DVD that sits on my counter for 3 months, and I'm like, why am I paying for this? I could have bought this DVD 3 times over by now. But for the most part, we're seeing just a continuous lack of interest in most of these giant, what are supposed to be blockbuster films. The Mummy from Universal, that was supposed to be the launch of their new shared universe, crapped out here entirely, has only now been made a success because of what it did in China. At some point, we're going to start making films legitimately for not the U.S. is the only thing I can see. Because we're just a little too cranky about our movies, and our big stars aren't big stars to us anymore. So China is more than happy to have a Tom Cruise vehicle and very, very excited to have a Will Smith movie and everything. But we don't want them. You know, we're either spoiled or we're bitter or we're millennials and we're breaking Applebee's, and so we're breaking the movie industry and everything else at the same time. I don't know what the case is. I just know that I keep seeing the same shit stuff come out. And I don't get it. I don't understand how you can put forth a fucking green screen movie about Hercules 1 month and it doesn't sell, and then about Egyptian gods with a bunch of white people in it the next month and it doesn't fucking sell. And then you're like, well, let's put forth this other green screen movie now and see if people are into it. Again, no, we're not. We're never going to be into it. Shut the fuck up. Go away. You ain't Frank Miller, and Frank Miller couldn't fucking do it with the Spirit. So what do you think you're going to do? Just stop. Just fucking stop. But that's my opinion. What do you guys say?
You might as well drop the mic. You covered everything, and I have nothing to come back with that. I was going to ask, do you think we're spoiled? Do you think it's a lack of creativity? But you already covered all of it. So outside
I hedged my bets.
Right? Outside of Star Wars and the Marvel universe, big box movies are fuck all. They're going across the sea.
So I mean, a lot of it, and we've seen this in years past, like where, for example, and I'm not going to speak to quality of movies. I'm just going to speak to movies that I know this happened. Battleship aired had been in the theaters a full month in the UK before it premiered in America. So, I mean, and you can speak to the quality of the movie however you want, but you look at that same thing and there has to be a reason to that as to why they would, air, release the movie, a full month before here.
Well, they
When
released
usually-
Star Wars in the UK before they released it here because it was filmed there, right?
But that was 2 days or a week at the most.
I think it was about a week. But I mean,
Yeah.
God damn, you can't get much more American, like, ingrained. We own this shit if we want to feel our fucking privilege rising up out of us than Star Wars, And so
you mean then a movie about the American military? Granted, they did this alien invasion thing or whatever too, but
I don't know what you're fucking talking about, man. My film had stormtroopers in it. Like maybe that's where we're going. Fucking Black Lives Matter, people. So I just know that the distribution and everything is one thing, and certainly if a movie comes out in one place first, then there's a chance of piracy. But I don't think that's what's going on here. I think there is a genuine disinterest for 70% of the films that are coming out now. And I think it's because they all are meant to achieve the super high level. So when you have a smaller film that has a budget in the range of a 35 million and it only takes 50 million for it to be able to be seen as a success, and it breaks 100 million and it's like, oh well, shit, we're going to do sequels galore on this, then that's perfectly well and good. But when you're having super high expectations all the time, you cannot always meet those expectations. So you're going to fail more often than not. And it's the same thing I've always said with superhero comics and Superman in particular, is if you make Superman have every power and you give him invulnerability and you give him giant strength where he can bench press the fucking planet and all these other things, then eventually you lose the ability for Superman to fight anybody because the whole danger is gone. Also in teen comics, if the Avengers are saving the world every fucking issue, then at some point they go up to, well, we can't just save the world, we have to save the galaxy. And then we can't just save the galaxy, we have to save the universe. And we can't just save the universe, we have to save all existence in time and space and fucking whatever. They Neil deGrasse Tyson that shit out. And then at some point it's like, well, then I guess I'm really not that interested in the Luke Cage fights the Scorpion issue, because the universe and everything that began and ended with the atom isn't taken into account here. It's just some guy punching another guy. That seems dull now. You do that all the fucking time. That's your go-to. You're always rocketed to 100. People are going to look at it and say, well, you only hit 13 when you promised 100. Or my expectations are 105 now, and you can't even make it to 80. So I'm done with you.
So this is why regular porn doesn't get me off anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I need albino midget stump porn, or I just can't do it.
Lesbian Eskimo ninja left-handers. Yeah.
And I know the term is little people stump porn, but I get you. I completely. Steve Martin did a thing about listening to the stereo and then going to the quadraphonic and how the ear gets more desensitized to the old stuff because it's like you build up a tolerance to it and then you build up to something better and you can't go backwards. And I can't do Steve Martin justice except on the banjo because I will clip your fucking ass. But I do think that that's it. Is when you see people excited about story, they're looking at TV now, and I feel like this season of an HBO series went high on the spectacle and went less on the story mattering as much. And there's a couple reasons why I think that happened, but
last week
I think that's the same thing. Is like that's why we had a shorter season of the show, and why we'll have a shorter season next season.
Did any of you catch Rick and Morty last night and the bumper at the end of the show?
What was the bumper?
Bumper was the rest in peace, the writing on Game of Thrones. Whenever the show started in 2016.
Fair.
And there's
totally fair.
Drama now where Roiland got on Twitter and he's like, yeah, I had nothing to do with that. Don't yell at me. But I totally agree.
Because if you're a fucking writer, if you're a fucking filmmaker or a TV filmmaker or whatever, you don't fucking do that. Because Lucas did that shit with Godzilla. They had the Godzilla posters everywhere that said size matters. And so Lucas put out, after Godzilla came out, and he put out the big sign that said plot matters, making fun of Godzilla. And then the fucking first prequel came out. It's like, well, shit.
Yeah. All spectacle, no plot. Anyway, back to the movies. I chalk it up to, I think we've talked about it before, Corey, where I mentioned Rotten Tomatoes and all of that. I chalk it up to, you mentioned TV, so I chalk it up to cord cutting. I chalk it up to Rotten Tomatoes and other websites like that where people want instant gratification. If they see a low score, it they're not going to go. Whereas back in the day, you'd go into a movie blind and you would just go to a summer Blockbuster on principle. I mean, there was a time and a place for me to do that. And now, before we go to a movie, we have that discussion. Well, what's the rating? And neither one of us are ones to really buy into reviews, but we will look at that number and debate, given the cost of a movie ticket now, is it worth it to us to actually go?
And
TV is typically better. TV now, like we were talking about, you're going to get a better product on TV. I have Preacher on in the background. That show has been way better than any movie that I've been to lately. So
I look at a lot of this. So the article, it points out that there have been these exceptions to prove the rule. Where there have been the bright spots, the Wonder Womans, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Dunkirk, Baby Driver. There have been the outright failures. And, one of those is something that me and Brandon talked about, like 3 weeks ago with Dark Tower. But then you look at The Nut Job 2, which is a movie that pretty sure we can all, say did not deserve a sequel. So why they give us this thing out of nowhere? I'm like, what? Like, I remember seeing the trailer. I'm like, why the fuck did they do a sequel to this movie? Whose kid asked for this movie? Sort of thing.
How did the first Nut Job do, though? I mean, compared to how much it cost to make and putting out a sequel, because that's the thing. Is like there is a sense of kids' movies are going to do well no matter what the fuck they are. Now, that's not always true, but then you see some shit like the Emoji Movie, and you go, how in the fuck does the Emoji Movie get made? And worse, how does it make money? And I'm sure the Rotten Tomatoes score on that was piss poor, but everybody went and saw it anyway. So I'm not really a believer in those scores making a difference, at least for a certain type of audience. The Transformers films, I know, Brandon, you brought this up a little bit on Sunday.
I know, I was waiting to fuck me in the ass over it, too.
No, I mean, the Transformers films are strangely successful. And yes, again, more successful overseas. But even in America, they've done pretty well for themselves. I have not been able to understand them since the beginning because I can't tell the difference between any of the characters on the screen. And I'm talking about the humans in that too, that they all just fucking do the same shit and sound alike and look alike. And you see the same goddamn footage and explosions from the other fucking Michael Bay movie.
Noise for me. It makes no sense at all. I couldn't follow Transformers 2 at all. By the way, Bobby Moynihan left NSL to do SNL to do fucking Nut Job 2. You leave a job you've had for what fucking years at this point? A shit ass movie.
Wait,
Bobby Moynihan actually has a CBS sitcom coming out.
Yeah,
really? What is it? Do you know?
It's called Me, Myself, and I.
I see.
It's basically Young Sheldon except through the generations.
It's Young Sheldon where he's playing the Sheldon Cooper now. You got John Larroquette playing him in the future, and then there's a child actor playing both of them as a kid.
That's gonna get canceled.
Maybe, but it does give you an opportunity to work with John Larroquette, and I can't say that I wouldn't have made the same goddamn decision.
That is true.
But yeah, so the Transformer movies are a good example of people kept going to see them, and I am not that audience, but there is an audience for it. And they keep making the same thing over and over again until now what they're doing is they're doing a prequel that is in the 80s that has John Cena and has the girl from from the Pitch Perfect 2 and the Western remake. I can't think of her name, unfortunately.
Haley
Steinfeld. So that's going to be about Bumblebee because they wanted to do an expanded universe for Transformers. Because why the fuck wouldn't you do an expanded universe of the same goddamn stories over and over again? But at least maybe this one will be a little bit different because of a different time and some new actual actors in it. Wahlberg. But
they're bringing back Starsky and Hutch on TV. They're bringing back SWAT. Can we just do away with all of that? Write that off. It's not going to be a good cash grab. It's
funny that they bring them back from films to TV again,
right?
Which is kind of what the problem is with movies for a while too, is that it's like, oh, all these nostalgic TV series, we're going to make a movie out of it, and we're going to expect that the nostalgia is going to be what sells you. So how come no one saw Baywatch? I didn't think Baywatch was a great show to begin with, but I certainly didn't look at the Baywatch movie and thought that's a must-see. I didn't feel that way about Chips. I didn't feel that way about any of these. I mean, Starsky and Hutch had Stiller and Wilson at a prime point for both those actors, but it still didn't look like it was going to be the funniest comedy of the decade or anything when it came out. It was just, yeah, we're going to put these guys in a weird situation and have some throwbacks to the 70s. I actually love the SWAT movie. It's one of those guilty pleasures of mine that I watch every time it's on TV.
That had LL Cool J in it.
LL Cool J, Colin Farrell. Yeah, Colin Farrell and
Michelle
Rodriguez.
Ooh, movies. I thought the Dukes one was the best between like SWAT, Miami Vice, Dukes of Hazzard, Starsky and Hutch, all of those that came out then. So if they're going to do that in TV now, does that signal like a swing shift back to shitty TV and better movies? I doubt it.
Well, every time they do the movie to film and then they try to bring the film back to TV, I don't know that it does any better anyways. And that's, again, TV's trying to work on nostalgia. There's a MacGyver series out right now. A couple years ago, they tried to bring Charlie's Angels back to TV after the film franchise had hit its point of like no more, and that didn't do very well. Bionic Woman, Knight Rider, all of those things have tried and failed over and over again.
You definitely forgot Ironsides. That came back too.
Yeah, Ironside. I think Ironside is coming back again. I think Robert Downey Jr. is working on producing it.
Wow, amazing.
Not surprising at all. Hawaii Five-0 is actually very successful because it's on CBS on Friday nights, and it's like people who are just waiting for their hot milk to kick in so they can go to sleep. It's the only thing that's on. I get that.
My mother. Yeah.
I'm 2 years away from that myself.
Speaking of Brandon's mother, Nate, I was trying to find a way to bring you in for so much, but they both kept talking. I'm like, okay, they went quiet. Segue, Nate.
That's why I didn't want to butt in and say anything. So
I was thirsty. I needed something to suckle. So here's Nate.
But you guys know that this weekend was like the piss poorest weekend for films in like forever. Like the highest grossing movie this weekend was the second week, I think, of The Hitman's Bodyguard. It made 10 million, followed by Annabelle Creation. So there was nothing that came out that was drawing people's interests.
Well, there was nothing that came out. I mean,
Hitman's Bodyguard, isn't that the Sam Jackson movie?
Sam Jackson, Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, I do actually want to see that. But this movie was also the Mayweather-McGregor fight and the season finale of Game of Thrones. Granted, neither of those were on Friday, but
yeah, and Houston is obviously going through terrible weather and everything, but I just don't think that really shows enough of why everybody decided not to go see the movies. There's always stuff like that happening. Not always that level of disaster, and I certainly don't want to downplay what's
Is it just
on.
that there's nothing? I mean, I guess it's what you guys are kind of hitting on, but there's nothing worth seeing.
Yeah.
You also add to there's a lot of factors. I mean, I would like to see what the box office stats are for like the last week in August, first week September, just because you have back to school, so people are spending a lot of money there. Typically, like your summer blockbusters are here and gone, and then people are trying to get out because again, for a lot of places in the country, it's the last real weekend of summer because we've got. I mean, this weekend coming up is like the big end of summer weekend. It's Labor Day weekend. So, I mean, people are more kind of geared towards their last couple of days at the beach or whatever it is that they're doing their last couple of days. I mean, after this coming weekend, like, again, if you're in an area that has like your typical Four Seasons, obviously I'm not talking about like, Southern California, stuff like that. But, you've got your theme parks are going to be going back to like the limited hours before they close for the seasons and things like that. So I don't think I'm curious as to if these next couple of weekends or the one we've passed and then the one coming up are typically low for movies anyway.
But that's a prime time to like throw out something that would be that have no competition and that sudden hit of, yeah, we know it's going to be slow because predictably it's slow every year, but to not have anything land. And Brandon had answered something that you mentioned. Number 9 out of the top 10 of the films of the weekend was the Mayweather-McGregor fight. They played it in some theaters. It made $2.6 million.
Well, I know the theater plays Game of Thrones episodically every weekend, and you can go to the theater and watch Game of Thrones.
I'll put it to you guys this way: as someone who, for the month of the like July and August, I was going almost weekly to the movies. Like it slowed down. Like I was looking through IMDb one of the apps, just looking through at the movies. Like, okay, what's coming out the next week, and planning it out. And I'm like, don't really have any interest here. Like it's like I hit September and I'm like, there's like 3 movies. I think The Kingsman comes out in September, but it's like, you know, 2.
Kingsman is probably the first thing since all of summer that I want to go see it in the theater because it's loud. There's a lot of really cool effects, so it's going to be great.
And Channing Tatum's in there.
well, yeah, you know, I mean, extra large Channing Tatum, you got to have that. But no, so and it's going to be good. But again, like, not to rehash the conversation that we had with Amy a couple weeks ago, but yeah, there's nothing worth going to the theater for. Like, literally everything that came out this summer that was considered a big hit, Wonder Woman, Spider-Man, things like that. Those are all things that I'm perfectly comfortable waiting for digital release. Actually, Wonder Woman is either out or comes out on digital. It's either out. I think it's out tomorrow on digital.
Out tomorrow on digital, yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned Baywatch. That's already on digital. I'm sure Homecoming is right around the corner. So Brandon and I have actually had this conversation, I think at least once or twice in the recent past, where the turnaround now is so quick. If you don't absolutely have to see it in the theater, you're waiting what, like a month and a half? I mean, look how much money Wonder Woman made, and it's already on digital.
Guardians is already out. I already own it, and that seems like it just left the theater. But there's a time and a place to go to the theater, though. I agree with everything you're saying, but I think some movies need to be seen in a theater. And me personally, I like the experience of the theater.
And I think Beat hit it here a little bit ago in the producer chat, but he said that the biggest blockbusters, Star Wars, Harry Potter, are all in late fall or winter. A lot of the big studio tentpole movies, they've looked at this and looked at, okay, what's making, what gets more money? It's either June, July, August, or November, December, October, November, December. That's really going to hit big. And then there's a little bit in March.
But that's because we've been trained to do that. It's the same thing as Black Friday sales. If you instill in everybody that your biggest sale is going to happen this single day every year, even though it's not necessarily true, but that's the fever that you build up to, then the 3 days before Thanksgiving, no one wants to shop with you. It's because you fucking made them believe that they shouldn't shop with you those days. If you tell people over and over again, oh, our biggest hits are only going to come out these specific dates throughout the year, then don't fucking go see the movies at the end of August. Don't fucking see the movies in February. And don't be surprised when your movies sell for shit during that time then. You're the ones who chose when to pack these things together. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to put Spider-Man out 2 weeks after Wonder Woman, even though Wonder Woman's still kicking ass. We'll expect that people will want to go see Spider-Man now. And they did, and that's great, but not to the same degree that they might have if Spider-Man came up against nothing like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but do you think some of that is to pull the momentum away again from DC? Like, this was the first decent, like, there were elements to Batman vs. Superman that were enjoyable. There were elements to Suicide Squad that were enjoyable. Both movies were absolutely horrible, but there were elements that were enjoyable. Now, I haven't seen Wonder Woman yet, but the general consensus is that front to back, it's the first great movie that DC has done in a while.
It's great in comparison to what they've already put out. Again, like, I found it to be a pretty standard movie. It didn't really shake my foundations. I did see it in the theater at the very end of its run. Maybe it's still in the theater. I don't know. But
I think like dollar theaters.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, so I mean, I think it was just kind of to pull the steam out of DC. To say, look, like, I mean, because, yeah, Spider-Man is a headliner for sure, but not so much lately just because he's had the bad movies being done by Fox, with
and overabundance of movies, too.
Yeah, right. With the Tobey Maguire movies and then the Andrew Garfield movies. Like, it's just been a whole cachet of shit. So now you've got this new one that is being basically directed by Marvel Studios. So that was their way of saying, all right, you know what? DC had their 2 weeks in the sun. Like, let's go and put them back down to their level. And you add Spider-Man, who, again, could be considered a character that some people are growing tired of because he's been reborn in the big screen universe so many times. Yet he still came out and clobbered Wonder Woman, which was like the first female-led superhero movie. So I think that was kind of like their way of coming out and just saying, look, you might have a little bit of it, but we've still got it.
Well, you're taking Marvel's flagship character and putting it up against a character in DC that isn't Batman. So there's no way to fail. And do the DC execs and the Marvel execs see each other's movies before release? I don't think so. But I think Marvel...
You're talking about, I believe, the last like fan poll, you're talking about the number 3 character beating out the number 4 character. Like overall,
I also want to say that I wouldn't particularly point that Spider-Man clobbered Wonder Woman because Wonder Woman at this point, now she's at 13 weeks, but she's at 406 million domestically, and Spider-Man at 8 weeks is at 318
Right, but I mean, didn't clobber her for the weekend though.
Like, that was my question.
He beat her out for the weekend after she'd been out for a couple weeks. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was
knocked her out of the top spot.
It would have been surprising for it to not be that way, but the longevity of Wonder Woman, I think, has impressed everybody.
Four-way conversations are fun. Those of you that have seen both of those movies, which do you find to be the superior film?
Superior is a very iffy thing because
right?
All right, well, not just that they're too different. Spider-Man got to draw from all of the Marvel films before it.
True.
And that makes a difference from all the perspectives of all the other Spider-Man movies as well, is that it got to pull in Tony Stark. It got to pull in Captain America. It got to pull in a built-in audience that also were very likely to want to have a successful Spider-Man film on top of that. So it had advantages that Wonder Woman did not have, because Wonder Woman, while it ties into the character being introduced in Batman v Superman, did not really do anything with that connection in its film, and kind of thank God for that. And she was not a proven entity in films before that. Spider-Man had 5 other movies. Wonder Woman hadn't been seen in mainstream stuff since her TV series in the 70s, and then every time she appeared in a teen thing with the Super Friends / Justice League cartoons. So this was a big step for Wonder Woman to succeed in the way that it did, and I think that it doesn't even compare.
Do you think that DC is smart now with the success of Wonder Woman? And I guess you could call the other one a financial success too, but based off of the Justice League trailers, they've now thrown their weight behind Wonder Woman as opposed to Batman or Superman. Do you think that's smart of them to do, or like
I think with some of the reshoots they might have done some of that, but looking at it right now, I don't see Justice League being that film. I think whatever is the next movie that's coming out is going to be what the film that they retool to, not necessarily be like, oh, let's focus in on Wonder Woman, but focus in on what made Wonder Woman so successful.
Well, I think you're seeing that with the movies that are getting announced that were coming out of nowhere.
Exactly.
The Batgirl movie, the Nightwing movie, all these other things that are coming up, the things that were already laid down, the expectations were, we understand what they're going to be doing with an Aquaman movie because the director has already had something in mind from the beginning, and then that's the director that hasn't left the project yet. Flash, we have no fucking idea because Flash just keeps going through directors and stories faster than a fucking Flash.
Hell for Flash. What DC needs to do is regroup and fill the niche that Marvel hasn't filled and focus on the female-driven films.
All I think that DC needs to do is be true to their characters and be true to what made these characters long-beloved legends for decades now, for almost a century now. And what they haven't done is that. What they've done is they've said, wow, we've had really great success in movies with our Batman flicks. Let's make more Batman flicks starring these other characters. And that's the wrong way to go about it, in my opinion.
You know what I think would be interesting? And I had this thought a couple days ago, so why not just talk about it here? So you have Marvel, who is obviously, they're championing the theater right now, right? So their movies are like, they've got the theater locked down. Like, even if the movie is mediocre, it typically does well, at least turns a profit.
Marvel is your Blizzard. What you say you're into with Blizzard is what Marvel does.
Right.
It's because you go into it and you're comfortable. You know you're going to get a reasonably good quality to great quality, that even if it's not the one that blows your tits off, it's still going to be an enjoyable movie.
I wish I could find something to blow my tits off. That would save me a lot of time.
No more Roman.
I am Brandon.
But no, but where I was going was, but Marvel fails in TV. Like, their television series, they are mediocre at best, like with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and things like that. Whereas with DC, they stumble in the theater up till Wonder Woman, but they nail the TV, like the television stuff. Like, you've got all the stuff on, what is it? The WB, all that stuff's on, right? And that's all successful. You've got Gotham, which is widely successful. And we're actually getting Bruce Wayne in a costume, the start of the new season. The new season is called A Dark Knight. So the thought that I had that I thought would be really cool. So they've got some of the characters, again, on WB. They've got Batman on Fox. Like, with comics, you have this whole multiverse thing, right? So you have like different storylines going different paths. Wouldn't it be cool if they had different contracts with different television companies or different channel studios or whatever the terminology is there. So you had like you had several of the characters on Fox running in Gotham, which you do currently in the Batman universe. You know, you've got all your villains in Batman and whatnot. Then you've got your WB stuff, and then maybe do something with like the USA Network. I don't know. And then like have a different storyline with the same characters. So essentially what DC does then is they turn several TV stations into different multiverses where they're running different storylines.
That would be great if not for the nuts and bolts of it all. Not to mention the fact that if they did a show on USA, it would inevitably be homogenized into wrestling, and then you would have superheroes in wrestling.
You know, I was wondering if you were going to go wrestling, and I'm like, maybe not.
Oh, the days of the cartoon train on USA are long gone, man. That's what they need to bring back.
That is sort of what they're doing right now, though, because DC is introducing a Teen Titans series that's probably going to wind up on TNT or something. It's not going to be on CW, but it's from the same people who do the CW shows. So it's a question of if they'll be able to make references. They talked briefly about not having Black Lightning in the Green Arrow universe, and I think they kind of step back from that and say, well, he's going to be separate, but that's only because we're not going to involve him in those storylines right away, and then somewhere down the road they can. But you've got to also look at the fact that DC, when they introduced characters from the Suicide Squad into Arrow, they immediately felt the need to kill them off in just the most slapdash way because, oh shit, we've got a Suicide Squad movie. We don't want to confuse people who watch the show, even though we also have a Flash movie coming up. And I don't think we're going to kill our Flash on the show, right? So they are very convoluted in their choices of, do we have a multiverse? Do we not have a multiverse? And does it really fucking matter to the fans?
To correct you on one thing, though, with the Titans TV show that is being done by Greg Berlanti and the co, that is, I believe, going to be on their DC streaming app. Along with Young Justice series or season 3.
So nobody will watch it.
Right. So that's all good.
Streaming separation.
That whole thing has got to implode. I mean, how do they not see the writing on the wall with all of that?
Well, you know what's funny is like we are responsible for that. Like for years and years and years, we complained with cable about how we have to pay exorbitant amounts for cable and we get stuck. Like, who the fuck watches the Food Network? Like, why is that in my cable
all
pack?
the time?
You are a couple of years away.
I do at lunch.
So, but yeah. So I mean, maybe that was a bad one. My next go-to would be Animal Planet, but I'm anyway.
My wife.
There you go.
You want C-SPAN, man.
So yeah, so my thing though is so we complain.
Is why do we pay so much money for channels we don't want?
Right. So now they split them.
$8 per channel. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, what it would come down to is like my thing isn't so much the separate per channel. Like, I mean, you pay $15 a month for HBO. So if you're paying $8 a month for all this other stuff, my thing is HBO and Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and things like that, they are a collaboration of different networks. I mean, HBO, yes, they are a network, but they have stuff from other, like they have movies and whatnot too. So there's more there, and they have amazing shows with Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and things of the like. You have several things coming together to form a service of multiple channels and multiple avenues. Whereas like CBS, right? So now they're doing their streaming service. What the hell do they have to offer but Star Trek?
That's it.
Yeah, but that's it though. And
That's
is it going to be a big enough draw? And now you've got DC, which, yeah, there'll be some hardcore fans, but is it enough draw? Like, would these companies not make, like, sure, don't sign with Netflix because Netflix has Marvel, but would DC perhaps not make more money signing a contract with Hulu and saying, look, okay, well.
Hulu also has Marvel.
Yeah.
Does Hulu also have Marvel?
Hulu has
gotta remember,
the Marvel Runaways TV show.
Yeah, that Marvel has kind of spread themselves out a little bit on that. But the other thing is you got to remember, DC isn't DC. DC is Warner Brothers.
That's true.
Warner Brothers themselves have a ton of content. So if they decide that it's a Warner Brothers streaming service, not a DC streaming service, which makes a lot more fucking sense.
Yeah, I could see that.
That could happen. And part of it will be when they can get back the rights to have the stuff to themselves that they haven't already leased out to Netflix and Amazon and wherever else. As far as CBS has 70 years of programming from TV. And on top of that, a lot of the stuff they produced for other channels or for films and stuff. These things do all kind of tie in together. All the Chuck Lorre shows are from CBS. And say what you want about the Big Bang Theory, it's a big fucking hit. That guy has made a lot of big fucking hits. Granted, they're all in syndication. We've seen them to death, but that doesn't mean that he's not going to make the next thing that people want to watch. It's going to go over to that streaming network. So it's not so much that there's too many different ones. It's that eventually they're going to just kind of crawl into each other, and you're going to have to pick your favorites. But we're not going to have 100 channels like we do on cable.
Right.
We're going to have 5 services.
I don't disagree. Like CBS, again, it's great, but as far as the streaming thing, though, like with the CBS streaming service, the only reason I would pay for that would be Star Trek, because anything else is on CBS, so I can just open my Spectrum app and watch it on CBS.
Well, right now,
I don't need the service. Like,
yeah. Well,
I mean, I guess what's that?
There's nothing else on CBS that we're talking about. Although we do know that the Good Wife spinoff is on the CBS streaming.
Well, Big Bang Theory is still around, and it's still a powerhouse. So,
but like you said, it's on TV. It's the other things that we're going to find that are only on the streaming service. That once you're there, it's like you've opened the door and you've walked in, and it's like, oh, but what's this thing over here? Oh, I didn't know that they had this show. I've always kind of want to watch this. Yeah, I'll pay the $8 for an extra month of this just to be able to get through this whole streaming thing. Oh, wait, my wife is now into this thing. I might check that out with her, or at least I've got to keep it on because she doesn't want to stop watching it yet. My wife just had someone send her all the DVDs for Hannibal. And we'd watched Hannibal when it first came out, and we couldn't stick with it at that point in time. We had too much other stuff on our plates. And I always said I wanted to get back to it. So I'd been planning for this to happen. And a friend of hers is like, you have to watch Hannibal. You have to watch Hannibal. So she sent her the DVDs. So now my wife is sitting there watching Hannibal without me. I thought it would be. So she's in the other room watching fucking Hannibal without me. And I'm like, well, I wanted to watch fucking Hannibal a year ago. I was just waiting for the time to get to watch it with you. But the same thing is like, if she wasn't watching it on DVDs and she was watching it on some streaming service that we got for a month to try out, I could not end that streaming service until she finishes the show. Whether it's like, well, it's up for renewal and I want to cancel it. Well, I've got 10 episodes left, so I don't know what you're gonna fucking do, asshole. I'm gonna let you watch your goddamn show.
Well, damn.
For more on this Galactic Network podcast, go to gncast.com. That's GNCASTS.com.